Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to realize too late that they were never really who you thought they were? That feeling is one of the worst things a person can go through. And here's the hard truth. Trust is earned slowly, drop by drop, but it can be destroyed in an instant. The painful reality is that people almost never betray you out of nowhere. The signs are always there. Tiny behaviors, quiet red flags, things we push aside because we want to believe the best in people. But if someone keeps showing you these patterns, don't just be cautious. Walk away. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could protect you from someone who doesn't deserve your trust. And if this kind of content speaks to you, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the Stoic Code right now. We put out videos like this every week. Let's start with lying about small things. Most people are watching out for the big lies, the dramatic betrayals, the obvious deceptions. But the real warning sign is far quieter than that. It's the casual, everyday dishonesty that seems too harmless to worry about. The thing is, small lies are rarely just about the information being hidden. They're about something much deeper. They reveal a person's entire relationship with truth. When someone lies about things that don't even matter, they're showing you that honesty is not a priority for them. You notice it in small moments. They mention being stuck in traffic, but later it slips out that they stopped somewhere else. They claim they never saw your message, yet you could clearly see they were active online. They color stories to make themselves look better. They deny saying something you distinctly remember. Individually, each one feels easy to forgive. But trust doesn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It wears down slowly, the way water gradually hollows out stone. Small lies are practice runs. They make deception feel comfortable and normal. And eventually, you reach a point where you genuinely can't tell when someone is being real with you. What makes this even more unsettling is that these lies often serve absolutely no purpose. There's no serious consequence to just telling the truth. So why lie at all? It usually comes down to managing image. Some people lie to seem more impressive, to avoid minor embarrassment, or to stay in control of how others see them. But a person who can't be honest about small things would absolutely struggle to be honest when the stakes are real. And that creates a quiet, slow burning instability in your relationship. You begin second-guessing conversations. You replay moments in your head. You start wondering if you misunderstood something, not because you're being paranoid, but because inconsistency forces your brain to search for explanations. At its core, trust is psychological safety. It's being able to relax in someone's presence without constantly analyzing what they said. Small lies chip away at that safety. Trustworthy people feel genuinely uncomfortable being dishonest, even when lying would be the easier choice. They correct themselves, they admit when they're wrong. They clarify details without being asked. But chronic small liars consistently choose a smooth image over an honest reality. And that difference matters enormously over time. Because major betrayals rarely begin as major ones. They begin as small unchallenged patterns. Now, closely connected to that is the second sign. They never take responsibility. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone says the wrong thing sometimes, forgets commitments, or hurts someone without meaning to. That's just human, but consistently avoiding responsibility for those mistakes. That's a character pattern, not a bad day. You'll recognize this kind of person because in their version of every story, nothing is ever their fault. If they lose a job, the manager was unfair. If a relationship falls apart, the other person was the problem. If they hurt you, somehow you were too sensitive. There is always a reason, always an explanation, always someone else to point at, but almost never genuine ownership. At first, their explanations can sound completely reasonable, because life really is complicated and people do sometimes get treated unfairly. But patterns reveal truth. When someone is consistently blameless in every single story they tell, that's not bad luck. That's a deeply rooted habit of projecting responsibility outward to protect their own ego. And while that may shield their self-image, it quietly destroys trust. Because trust depends on accountability. Without it, problems can't be solved, conflicts can't be truly repaired, and growth becomes impossible. People who never take responsibility tend to use familiar defense mechanisms. Deflection: you bring up a concern and suddenly the focus shifts to something you did wrong months ago. Minimization: it wasn't that serious, you're overreacting. Justification: I only acted that way because of what you did. Their behavior is always framed as a reaction, never a conscious choice. But emotionally mature people understand that circumstances might influence how we feel, but they don't excuse how we act. Someone can be stressed and still choose to apologize. Someone can feel wronged and still communicate with respect. When that willingness to own mistakes is absent, trust starts to crack. Because you begin to realize that if this person ever truly hurts you, accountability is unlikely and repair may never come. The third sign is love bombing followed by withdrawal. When you first meet this type of person, the attention feels almost overwhelming in the best possible way. Constant messages, endless compliments, deep conversations that seem to come out of nowhere. They remember every little detail about you. They talk about the future early. They tell you that you're unlike anyone they've ever met, and it feels real because it does feel real, at least in the moment. This is love bombing, an intense, almost overwhelming flood of affection right at the start of a connection. The problem isn't the affection itself, it's the speed and intensity before any real foundation exists. Healthy connection builds gradually through shared time, honest moments, and gradual trust. Love bombing collapses that timeline. You find yourself emotionally invested before you've had a chance to truly understand who this person is, then something shifts. The same person who made you feel so chosen suddenly becomes distant, replies slow down, energy fades, plans start falling through. And the contrast is what makes it so disorienting, because you remember exactly how warm and attentive they were, so you search for reasons, you wonder what changed. You replay conversations, you try to recreate that early closeness. That's the quiet power of this pattern. The intense beginning creates an emotional high, and withdrawal creates a loss. Occasional warmth gives you just enough hope to keep you holding on. Real connection doesn't work that way. It feels less dramatic but far more stable. Communication stays relatively consistent. Closeness deepens alongside understanding. You feel calm more often than confused. When evaluating this pattern, look beyond the sweetness of how things began and ask yourself, does this connection feel steady over time, or am I always wondering where I stand? The fourth sign is showing up only when they need something. This one doesn't feel dramatic at all. It creeps in quietly. You don't hear from them for extended stretches. Conversations fade. Plans never quite come together. Then out of nowhere a message arrives. The tone is warm, familiar, and friendly. But almost without fail, there's a request attached. They need advice, emotional support, a favor, or information. Once that need is met, the silence returns. At first you rationalize it. They're busy. That's just their personality. But healthy relationships aren't activated only by necessity. Real connection exists between needs. People check in without agendas. They share things without needing anything in return. They reach out simply because they value your presence in their life. When someone appears consistently only during moments of personal need, the relationship starts feeling functional rather than mutual. You're being contacted when you're useful, not when you're missed. Over time, this creates a real imbalance. You show up for them, reliably, generously, fully. But when you need support, their presence feels uncertain or thin. You may not feel obviously used, but you don't feel genuinely valued either. A simple but revealing exercise is this: if you stopped reaching out entirely, what would happen? Would the connection continue naturally, or would silence stretch until the next moment of need? Because the people who truly value you don't wait until they need something to remind you that you matter to them. The fifth sign is betraying other people's secrets. Pay very close attention to how someone handles private information that was never theirs to share. You're in a normal conversation when suddenly they casually reveal something deeply personal about someone else. Sensitive details, private struggles, embarrassing moments. Sometimes they even whisper, "Don't tell anyone I told you this." And in that moment, it can feel like trust, like they've let you into their inner circle. But what you're actually watching is a boundary being violated. Trustworthiness isn't situational, it's behavioral. A person who repeatedly shares other people's private information is showing you exactly how comfortable they are with breaking confidentiality. And you might think you're different, but they wouldn't do the same to you. But behavior patterns rarely make personal exceptions. If someone treats other people's private lives as casual conversation material, it's only a matter of time before you become the subject. Over time, witnessing this pattern changes how safe you feel. You begin to filter what you share. You mentally sort topics into safe and unsafe. That quiet caution is telling you something important. Trust allows you to speak freely without anticipating exposure. When someone routinely shares secrets that aren't theirs, that freedom quietly disappears. Sign number 6 is rushing intimacy. Real intimacy develops slowly, through shared experiences, honest conversations, gradual vulnerability, and the kind of time that allows two people to truly see one another. Some people try to bypass all of that. You meet them and almost immediately they're pushing for deep emotional closeness, personal disclosures, and serious commitment language. It can feel like rare chemistry, but there's a meaningful difference between genuine emotional openness and accelerated intimacy. Openness invites connection. Acceleration pressures it. Rushing intimacy compresses the timeline of discovery, encouraging emotional exposure before safety has had a chance to form. You may find yourself sharing things sooner than you normally would, not because you're ready, but because the emotional momentum has outpaced your natural pace. Another pattern is intense future orientation, early talk of trips together, meeting important people in each other's lives, serious relationship milestones, creating emotional investment in a future that has no grounded foundation yet. Healthy intimacy doesn't require speed to survive. It deepens precisely because it's given time to breathe and grow. So when someone consistently pushes for closeness faster than your comfort allows, pay attention, because real intimacy creates safety, and safety is never something that needs to be rushed. The seventh sign is keeping you isolated from the people who matter to you. Isolation never begins with obvious demands. It starts with a comment, a quiet suggestion, a planted doubt. They don't really support you. I don't think you're friends like me. You've changed since you started spending time with them. At first it sounds like protectiveness, like loyalty, but slowly your world shrinks. You spend less time with friends, family calls get shorter, plans with other people get cancelled more often. People who isolate others work indirectly, criticizing your friend's character, questioning your family's motives, creating subtle friction that makes spending time with others feel more trouble than it's worth. Healthy relationships expand your world. They celebrate your independence. They support your other connections rather than competing with them. But isolation shifts your entire reference point. When you have multiple voices in your life, you can reality check situations, gain perspective, and receive support from different directions. When those voices disappear, your perception becomes shaped almost entirely by one person, and that creates a dangerous vulnerability. Has your world grown since knowing this person, or has it quietly contracted? That question alone can be extraordinarily revealing. The eighth sign is when your intuition just feels off around someone. Nothing obvious has happened. The conversation flows, they say all the right things, but something inside you won't settle. You walk away from interactions replaying details, trying to figure out why you feel unsettled when nothing you can name actually went wrong. That quiet discomfort is your intuition communicating something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Untrustworthy people often trigger this feeling without committing any obvious offense. Their friendliness feels slightly performative. Compliments land as calculated rather than genuine. Their stories contain minor contradictions that are each easy to dismiss, but collectively uncomfortable. You may sense that they are studying you rather than truly connecting with you. Your nervous system picks up on emotional incongruence, when what someone says doesn't match what you feel, long before your conscious mind can articulate why. And if someone consistently dismisses your concerns, labels you as oversensitive, or uses humor to invalidate your perception, self-doubt will grow. But intuition is not anxiety. Anxiety spreads broadly across many situations. Intuition tends to be specific. It activates repeatedly around the same person. If your sense of unease keeps surfacing around one particular individual despite different circumstances, it's more likely pattern recognition than irrational worry. Never dismiss that quiet inner voice. In relationships, the earliest warning signs are rarely loud. The ninth sign is when they twist your words. You say something with completely normal intentions, but somehow your words return to you distorted, exaggerated, or entirely misrepresented. A gentle concern becomes criticism. A personal boundary becomes rejection. A simple preference becomes selfishness. People who do this reframe your words in ways that serve their own narrative, shifting emotional responsibility onto you, while neatly avoiding accountability for their own behavior. Conversations become exhausting because you spend more time correcting misunderstandings than actually communicating. You find yourself over-explaining, choosing every word carefully, mentally rehearsing statements in advance. Sometimes the twisting comes through selective listening. They isolate one fragment of your message while completely ignoring the context. Sometimes it's exaggeration. Neutral comments get amplified into extreme positions you never held. Sometimes it's retrospective rewriting. After the conversation ends, they insist you said things you never said or implied things you never meant. Over time, this pattern erodes your confidence in your own perception. You deserve conversations where your words are received with curiosity instead of suspicion, where meaning is explored rather than reconstructed. When someone consistently turns your voice into something it never was, the problem is never how you speak, it's how they choose to listen. And the 10th sign, they apologize without ever changing. Apologies are supposed to restore trust, acknowledge harm, and mark a genuine turning point. But when someone repeats the same apology for the same behavior over and over again, the words stop meaning anything, the tone sounds sincere, the emotion feels real, but the cycle continues: harm, apology, brief peace, and then the same behavior returns. This dynamic creates genuine confusion because part of you wants to believe the regret is real, while another part of you has started counting how many times you've been here before. Some people use apologies as emotional reset buttons, a way to relieve tension and restore access to the relationship without ever doing the work of actually changing. Once the discomfort has passed, behavior returns to exactly what it was because the apology served its function without requiring any real reflection. Trustworthy people treat apologies as the starting point of change, not the end of a conversation. They apologize and then you watch them make different choices. Progress may not be perfect, but it's visible through action. Words alone cannot repair patterns that behavior continues to reinforce. You deserve apologies that carry genuine weight, recognition followed by growth, and regret that actually translates into respect. Before we wrap up, here at the Stoic Code, we genuinely want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us which of these signs you've personally experienced. You might be surprised how many others have been through the exact same thing. And if this video resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear this right now. Trust is not something to be given away carelessly. It's earned through consistent words, consistent actions, and consistent respect. People who lie about small things, deflect responsibility, isolate you, rush your emotions, or offer empty apologies are sending you a clear and honest message about how much they truly value your trust. Recognizing these patterns isn't paranoia, it's self-protection. Surround yourself with people who show up without conditions, who honor your boundaries, and who act with integrity not just when it's convenient but in every interaction. Your time, your energy, and your trust are genuinely precious. Don't hand them to someone who treats them as optional. Listen to your intuition. Respect yourself enough to walk away from people who keep showing you who they are, even when it's uncomfortable. Because real trust is rare, and it should never feel fragile, forced, or conditional.